It's learning, I think, how to have self-intimacy and self-inquiry. Looking at when I ask myself, right, like one of the questions for myself and that I model for my coaching clients is the question of, what do you need, sweetheart?
Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton, and this is a podcast for women who seek to feel, express, and be who they were created to be. I'm so excited to announce my 22-day depression cleanse and emotional wholeness masterclass, 2 different online courses that just went live as a set, as a bundle on Monday. And what I'm doing is I'm offering both of them for the price of one from now through the end of April only. So you will be getting the 22-day depression cleanse free, which is 22 days, 22 minutes a day, 5-minute daily neurosensory method, building an emotional emergency kit step by step, doing a depression detox to reboot your biochemistry, and then going deeper with that emotional wholeness masterclass where you're going to get really powerful emotional healing processes that literally break your generational patterning and shift your DNA expression, guided video lessons of the 7 steps of emotional transformation, and more. So those 2 combined courses, you can go to cherieburton.com/course bundle. Both of these are my baby, and I'm so excited to share them. I took a group of 50 women through a beta test with a 22-day depression cleanse through a Facebook community. I saw some amazing transformations, and it's just done my heart good to be able to climb in and share that with women. So, on to Tiffany Peterson. Tiffany is a friend and colleague of mine who really has the gift and power to shift souls on the spot. She's a master sales trainer who operates from a space of authenticity and heart-based sharing. And she and I have a shared passion for giving women the inspiration and motivation and perspective around the importance of self-care. So enjoy this discussion with Tiffany and I. All right, Tiffany, thank you for coming on today and your willingness to have a really frank and real discussion for the sisters. Tiffany and I just had a prayer together, and so we know whatever's coming out is going to be divine mind and will.
We're ready to be dropped in, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So I've seen you on the local news. I know this is your MO. You spoke at my retreat last year, and the news segment, I guess it's like more of a lifestyle segment, right? With your emphasis on bringing women, well, men too probably, right? But mostly women to self-care and making a case for it. What would you say is the biggest wall, block, stumbling, whatever that people have? Why don't we do it? Why don't we just take the time and take care of ourselves? What's going on?
Gosh. Can I add just a little bit of perspective or backdrop to the conversation?
Please.
And then I will directly answer your question. But I think you don't have to go far to see the conversation of self-care is a really common conversation right now. Instagram, Facebook, memes, magazines. Is self-care. And self-care can mean a lot of things. It can mean, hey, getting a facial or a manicure, going and playing golf, if that's your thing, or getting a massage or something of that nature. And it can be those things, but it's really like putting the conversation or the thoughts of putting fuel in the tank of the self-love relationship. Mm-hmm. And having a self-love or a personal relationship with you is central to everything and everyone else in your life. Is that you are indeed the nucleus. You are energy more than you're anything else. And so the power of your energy and the power of your influence being anchored, being rooted, being grounded in a way where you feel more regularly. So no one feels it perfectly, but you feel more regularly connected to your higher sense of self. You connect to that inner queendom, as you and I both sometimes call that, or kingdom, we don't want to leave our gentleman friends out, but the reality of just this inner sense of self and relationship, and really prioritizing that as you would prioritize your spouse or your children or your best girlfriend or guy friend or your sister or your parents, is that is a living, breathing relationship as well. And just like any other relationship, you wouldn't expect a marriage to thrive if you didn't invest in it. Nor would you expect your business to thrive if you weren't investing in your business relationships. It just wouldn't ever be a thought process. But somehow the relationship with self, it's like we just expect it's just there. Like we're just moving around in this meat suit, this human skin suit, like just to get us from point A to point B, point A to point B, versus really being more in an anchored, connected relationship, a loving relationship. I love to say this, love, is that you're the one companion, one relationship, the one companion you're guaranteed to travel this life path with. Because we all have lifers. You get a few of those, and maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's not. Parents or close friends or whatnot, but most relationships have a time season on them. And it doesn't mean that all relationships necessarily end with dramatics. Of course not. But, it's like some of my friends I ran around with high school, we keep in touch here and there. Or some of my friends from college, we keep in touch here and there. But really, like, life moves on into different seasons, right? But you, the person that is you, will always be the relationship that you're in. And so it's having that become what I call, and this is going to sound cheesy and life coachy, but I am indeed a life coach. So it's fitting.
Okay. You can be cheesy on this.
Yeah, but it's like becoming your own best friend. And I want to say this, and I'm going to get vulnerable real quick and honest, is that, growing up myself and different life experiences, and we all have one, we all have a story. So I'm not going to elaborate on the story, but the reality is I've spent much of my life hustling for approval, auditioning for validation, hoping, waiting, wishing if someone could just pour enough love into me, right? If someone would come along and just make me feel valuable or tell me I'm pretty or that I'm enough. And all of us can relate to that at some level or another, is the, am I enough? That's everyone's wound if you want to pull back the behind the scenes.
Totally. It all boils down to that.
Right? It's yours, it's mine, it's everyone listening. At some level, it's, am I enough? And that gets manifested in different ways. Like, am I a good enough parent? Am I organized enough? Am I successful enough, rich enough, skinny enough, smart enough, spiritual enough? It's always mind-blowing to me how we use spirituality about, like, on a measurement. Like,
well, yeah. What does enough actually mean? I mean,
right?
It's so arbitrary and so open-ended and subjective for each one of us.
Right.
What is the standard that makes everything enough?
Right. Well, what we're after is an illusion. It's a feeling. It's kind of like, I don't know about you, but is your laundry ever all the way done?
No, never.
Never. Mm-mm. Now, you can be on top of it where you're like, hey, we got, several loads done, folded, even put away, versus the pile, clean pile, dirty pile, like your laundry, though, is never complete. And so I think a lot of times the thing about being a human being is we have feelings and we have emotions. And this is really insightful. This has changed the game for me a couple of years ago, is realizing that my feelings aren't always facts. They're not always truth.
Right.
They're just feelings. And so a lot of times we're waiting for a feeling to feel like we're enough. But that's just a great question for all of you to consider, is how much is enough, right? Like, how many social media followers, if that's part of your world, how many is enough? Or if you finally lose that 5 pounds, is that really enough? Or are you going to find, now this wrinkle needs to change on my face because I lost the 5 pounds, but now look at my nose and I now need this, or this isn't enough.
And I actually kind of look at that like we're wired to think abundantly. We actually think big. We have this interconnectedness. Little kids in the candy store is basically what we are. We want more and more and more. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's deleterious to our soul. Our soul is so expansive, right? And so you're saying, like, rein in the humanness, but honor the humanness of whatever that means, right?
Right. Well, and I love, when I'm talking about feelings and emotions, I love them. I mean, I love to feel joy and gratitude, and also deep sadness where there's been grief, or, we get all this fantastic experience being in this human life. But one of the things I think is really important around this conversation of self-care and self-love, self-esteem, I want you to all think about, when you feel better, do you show up differently? When you feel more comfortable and at peace, you've done your meditation, you feel anchored spiritually. When you've worked out that body and taken it on a walk or a jog or done a yoga class, or you've eaten a healthier meal, or you've done something on what I call your joy list, and you're feeling more like, that was fun. When you feel better, do you show up differently? And of course, the answer is yes. When I sleep well, I'm well rested, my bedroom's decluttered, and I feel peaceful in that, and so forth. When I feel better mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, I show up differently in my relationships. I show up differently in my business. I show up differently and in attractor energy. You're in the positive love lane, if I like to call it that way. But it's like you're in the space where when you feel good, you attract good and you have more good that's coming. That's a kind of a long Sunday drive back to your question, is discerning one quick, important, eternal truth is that your self-worth is perfect. Every one of you listening, whether you believe what I'm saying right now or not, that's okay, because you're judging it off of feelings. So we're back to feelings, is how we often discern and decide how we feel. But many of the things we're giving validation or value to or credit to is a changing landscape, like the laundry never being done. We're always trying to work at some of those feelings. But your worth is eternal. It's non-changeable. It's already it's eternal, internal, doesn't change. What does change are our feelings of self-confidence. And I think that's an important distinction. And so my worth, your worth is perfectly intact. There's nothing you can do to earn it. And there's nothing you could do on any scale to cast you into a place where you're no longer worthy. If you're in a body listening with those ears of yours right now, you're already worthy. Can't change the worth. What changes dramatically up and down and all over based on various experiences and triggers and humans and feeling like, well, in comparison to this, I'm great. In comparison to that, I'm terrible. Our feelings of self-confidence change all the time, right? Like for me, in the 8th grade, I had no self-confidence. And sometimes as a grown woman, I feel like what I call my 8th grade self shows up. My 8th grade self is highly concerned about, am I wearing the right thing? Do I fit in? How do I look? Am I liked? Am I included?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And we all have that. So my
go back to junior high, like at some level.
Well, I've learned to love her is the biggest shift in the last several years. Is I used to shame her like she was wrong and like, gosh, why are you still feeling this way? Get over this. Like, you're a grown woman. You shouldn't get your feelings hurt anymore. But you know what? Sometimes, honey, I get my feelings hurt. And sometimes I feel those things. So it's being able to discern the difference between your self-worth versus your self-confidence, which ebbs and flows.
Yeah. And I think that's the concept of wholeness I love so much, is that like you're already whole. That's the paradigm that we want to always try to reach to obtain, that we operate from this mindset of like, what I'm seeking is already here. I'm already whole. But like you're saying, this situational factors and relationships and volatility all around us, it kind of wanes our confidence.
Yes.
And so are you saying that in order to build confidence, okay, this is kind of a no-brainer coming out, like to build self-confidence, you take the time with yourself, you take you eke it out. Don't you think you have to schedule it? Like it's not going to happen if you don't schedule it in. Are you one of those people that agree with that?
I also want to make this distinction is not to have the self-care conversation be one more thing that you get after yourself about, like, gosh, I'm just not getting the ball right on self-care either, and dropping the ball here, and I'm not enough. Because again, that not enough conversation loves to show up everywhere.
Yeah.
It's learning, I think, how to have self-intimacy and self-inquiry. Looking at when I ask myself, right, like one of the questions for myself and that I model for my coaching clients is the question of, what do you need, sweetheart? And I'd like all of you to write that down. And again,
I just did actually
asking it right with yourself, because you know what? You know who the best life coach is on the whole planet? Yourself for you. I think you have the answers that you need if you will tune in. And so it's about creating the inquiry to say, what do you need, sweetheart? What are you craving more of? Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But foundationally, these are questions when we choose, and that's what all that's required is not your feelings to align, but to make a decision. So in part one of answering your question initially, what gets in our way is we haven't really made a decision, is to decide, right? Like, I'm going to choose to invest in the vessel. I'm going to choose to value my relationship with me. I'm going to choose to treat myself better. Is no matter what upbringing you had, some of you had an amazing upbringing, some of you had a lot of dysfunction, and most of us somewhere in between, if we're just looking at life, right? Like a handful of all of it. Well, no matter what your upbringing was, no matter if you're single, you're married, you're 77, you're 27, is that taking 100% like ownership to say, my happiness is in my hands. My happiness truly is up to me. A few weeks ago, I was rereading one of my favorite books by Oprah Winfrey called What I Know for Sure. Fantastic read. if you're looking for something great to read.
Well,
as I was reading that a few weeks ago, I reread something I'd read before, but it hit me differently. You know how that happens?
Yeah.
And as I'm reading in this, and she's talking about her upbringing, she got brought into the world. There was no baby shower celebrating her arrival. She was born to a teenage mother who, a lot of shame, out of wedlock. She was raised in a home without water, without electricity, came from really dire straits. And she came into the world not wanted. And it was kind of these different challenges. And then she talks about that. Well, she brings this full circle to what I've just shared. And I love how she shares it, as she says, right, is that you are 100% responsible for your happiness. And the moment you really own that and let everyone else off the hook, then that's like freedom. And I really sat with that. Like, I quit reading that sentence, closed my book, and I look up at my ceiling and I'm thinking, what if I really took that to heart? Because see, you'll see it on a Facebook post, you'll see it on Instagram. I love those kinds of quotes. I share them myself. But it's like, hey, I'm responsible for my happiness, or it's up to me. I got to fill my own cup, put my own oxygen mask on before I put on someone else's. I mean, how many times you see this kind of genre of conversation happening? It's happening all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like the take home message, like, especially I'm looking at like adolescent and young adult media, is you need something else to completely, it's like the antithesis of codependency is what you're saying, which is there's nobody to blame when it comes right down to it. There's literally no one. I mean, of course, children, and there's victimizations that happen all the time.
Sure.
But you're saying with Oprah, she's sort of this phenomenon of someone who just rose like a phoenix from the ashes based on, she had sexual abuse. She had all of these things happen. And she's so relatable. Of course, she's very wise. But for me, what endears me to her is, she's got the wisdom and she's very fearless in her approach to helping and lifting the consciousness. But she's so real. Yeah. And that's what I love about you too, actually. Every time I hear you speak, I'm like, dang, that's just real. There's no, when you get to the deeper truths that resonate with people, it's almost like all of the illusory, all the facades, everything just flies off. And one of the things that I've learned, and I know that you kind of alluded to this before, but for me, it was just like this big, huge aha, kind of like you were saying with the 100% happiness thing. For me, it was like every single situation I'm in, the lens I'm looking through is how I feel about myself. Like I'm interacting with this person. It's really not about them. How I interact with that person is the glasses I'm wearing, that moment of how I'm feeling about myself. Do I feel confident right now? Am I feeling love for myself? Because if it ain't streaming through me, it is not hitting that person. And I'm responsible for that flow, that faucet. And it's not easy. Like I thought I had it down at one point in my life. And then I was just hit with another life experience. And I'm like, I really am kind of like this way. I don't like this about myself. And it's harder for me.
Well,
and
I'm just kind to her.
I know. I was just going to say, I'm being transparent. Like I'm really hard on myself when I judge others because I'm really just judging myself. But I'm like, how do I come back and be like, it's okay, Cherie, you're just learning.
Gosh, I love this. See, we could be here for 4 hours, I think, sis. Like you and I put us together because you're so rich and deep, and I love your spirit and your heart and your brain. It's just like, oh. So I think one thing that's really important, and make sure those of you listening get a lot of what we're talking about, is it isn't about perfection. It's about the practice. I'm not perfect at self-love, actually far from it. The reason why I'm so passionate about teaching it is because I know what it feels like to feel terribly insecure. I know what it feels like to feel terribly alone. I know what it feels like to be waiting, hoping, wishing that just someone or something outside of me would show up and fulfill my life. And so I'm sharing as someone who's still in the journey. I'm not out of the journey. I'm just on it, and I'm on it, and I'm committed. And that's the difference, is it's not about perfection. As I love to say, perfect, no. Committed, yes. It is about entering in like to a marriage, literally with yourself, like you covenant or commit to if you're married or choose a lifestyle long-term partner. But the reality is like you choose in to say, I'm committed through the good and the great, through the good, the great, the hard, the challenging. So it's choosing love for yourself to say, I'm in a committed relationship with you. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. None of us get it right 100%. I don't. I'm a recovering perfectionist, probably similar to
Me
you.
too.
Where it's like, oh boy, how's that working for you?
But
So it's not about perfect, but it's about the practice of.
I'm just thinking out loud, like, what if someone isn't committed? Like, what if they don't value themselves yet enough to say, I'm worthy to be married to myself? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to phrase that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're either rejecting a part of themselves or they feel shame that they haven't resolved.
Yeah.
Or I just meet a lot of women who they just don't like to even be alone with
I
themselves.
know it. And I used to be her. And now, truthfully, the thing I crave most is like, like, how fast can I get home and climb in my bed with a good book or my Netflix? Because I just want to be with me.
I actually prefer to travel by myself sometimes. I just nestle in with my being.
Yes.
And check in with my soul.
Okay, so there's a few things I got to say, and I'm like all passionate. I'm pacing while we're on this because I'm like all this fun energy. To address immediately what you just said was, well, what do we say to the person who's saying, yeah, but I don't feel worthy of that. I'm not, well, again, we're back to a feeling and it's ultimately a choice, but I'd make it about progress. And I would write this down in your notes for those of you taking notes, is progress equals happiness. It isn't about perfection and it isn't about, oh, I feel perfectly amazing in myself today. It's, I'm going to make a little progress. And maybe your little progress sounds like, I'm going to commit to move my body 10 to 15 minutes a day. I'm not going to the gym. I don't have to do this massive workout, but I am going to move my body and go on a walk for 10 minutes a day. And by moving your body, you'll change your state. Maybe something simple as you go, I'm going to start a gratitude journal and gratitude 5 things a day. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I'm going to start reading a good book that nourishes my brain. Or I'm going to choose to get off technology earlier in the night and do a more self-nourishing activity to put myself to bed. Or I'm going to get myself, pick up those flowers at Trader Joe's for $5 or $7 and bring home a little love in my space. You're going to do something kind for yourself. It's not that overnight you overhaul your whole everything, but just make in this moment a decision to say, I'm going to commit to at least some progress with these practices. I'm going to commit to, or at least open the door. Just like any relationship, most of us don't go on a first date and get married that night. There's a courting process. And as cheesy or funny as that might sound, is like, date yourself.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, we talked about marriage, but hey, man, you got to date yourself.
Right. And for a marriage to thrive after the vows is you still have to date each other. And so same thing with yourself is like, hey, this awareness, like I'm in this relationship with me. There's one thing I want to share, and just to elaborate too, is last week I was with a group of women at a gathering, and one of them said to me, she doesn't know me as well as like you and I know each other. We've known each other peripheral for a little while, and she's lovely and we have a fun connection. But she just said, you just seem to have it so put together. And I just laughed. And I was like, yeah, well, the truth is sometimes I am. And sometimes I'm a really hot mess. I said, but here's the thing is I get triggered every single day, or at least every single week, I get triggered with one of my self-doubt, insecurity, or I'm judging someone else, or I'm heavily in the land of comparison, or I'm feeling angst or overwhelmed, or I'm not enough, or that person's ticking me off, or this thing here or that, where I'm just energetically and emotionally out of the lane. I'm out of the light. I'm out of my good flow, and I'm in the stress. I'm in the not enough. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like that comes up for me every dang day or week.
Me too. And actually, it's almost like the universe going, okay, so you've been asking for this understanding. Okay, so you've been asking for this kind of gift. I'm going to keep pushing your buttons because that's the only way you can receive what's in store for you. And it kind of reminds me of, I don't know any other story to illustrate this better. I've been trying to find one, but when Edison was trying to invent the light bulb, and I think it was like 15,000, I want to say, or something like that, tries. And he documented a lot of them. But what if he'd given up on the one, 14,900 and whatever, progress, like you're saying, is we don't know how to, like in our cultures and in our constructs that we have, we don't know what that means because we get on social media and we see the shining superstar on the stage and it's the finished product of like all of the fetal position and all of the, like hot messness that you're talking about. I don't know a thought leader. And I would probably include Oprah in this because she's really real about it. Brene Brown, people like that. They are regularly having meltdowns. And I used to think that wasn't spiritual.
Yeah, like, oh
I
yeah,
actually had a belief.
yet.
Hey, I wanted to take a little time out in this great discussion with Tiffany to let you know about a couple of online courses I have launching as a bundle now through the end of April only. And it will be buy one, get one free, 22-day depression cleanse, and my emotional wholeness masterclass. You can find those on my website, cherieburton.com. Right there at the top of my website, there should be a banner with a link to purchase those as a bundle, or you can find them under courses on my website. Purchase them individually. Now, back to this beautiful discussion on self-nourishment and self-love.
But here's the thing, love. So what I'm saying is that isn't that it will be perfect, but that you have practices. So even though, so when this conversation was happening last week and someone said, you just seem like it's so put together and gosh, this and that. And I said, well, yeah, sometimes that's true, but sometimes I'm a total hot mess. But here's the thing. I have practices now that I do utilize as like my centering, my home base that bring me back home.
What are those things?
Back to center. And that's what I think matters is, do you have practices that can help reset you?
Yeah. I tried to make some universal practices and I just tried to put it out to some people, and some people really resonated with some of them and they just ate it up. And I think a lot of it had to do with temperament and natural gifts and triggers, because I try to throw meditation at some women and they just cannot. It's like, I'm not ready yet to be with my soul. I used to be there too, so I get it. I've brought, because I'm a Christian and I know you are too, and sometimes I will, when I was doing a lot of life coaching, I would take women, certain women who had resistance to spiritual practices, and I would work with them and I would do a visualization and I would say, okay, well, you're in nature and where are you? And then they would tell me their setting. And then I would say, well, look off in the distance or see who's walking toward you. And then they would, because for some people, if I were to put deity in the picture with them, they could not even remotely think that they could be side by side or at the feet or leaned up against or even having a conversation, because in their mind, they're so separate from being ready or worthy. And again, I include myself in that. I used to be like that. Now I'm like, Jesus, where are you? He's like, I've never left. What are your things? Like, what lights you up? What do you not dare take out of your existence?
Well, I think a couple of things. So again, we're talking about, and you all are your own best life coach. So it's learning and it's practicing. I invite you to try out some of the things that I share. And if they resonate, keep them. If they don't, leave them. This is your own journey that you get to kind of cultivate. There is a resource to point out to all of you that you can access for free on my website, which is tiffanyspeaks.com. That's my simple website, tiffanyspeaks.com. And then there's a tab at the top that says free resources. And if you'll click on that, the second one down says self-care guide, and you can download that. And there's a couple of worksheets that will walk you through. And there's a 4-quadrant worksheet that looks at body or physical, mental, emotional or heart, and then spirit or spirituality is really looking at whole person self-care and self-love. So knowing that that's a journey, there's also on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Tiffany Peterson, a series called Self-Care Equals Success, Part 1, 2, and 3. So I just want to tuck those in as additional resources where people can go deeper on their own and really get into some internal guidance for themselves. But some of my go-tos, definitely prayer is a part of my every morning and evening, is a great way to center, but even in the middle of the day. And it doesn't have to be in a formal place or a formal sitting position or something. Like you said, sometimes I just call upon God. And I know not all of you will resonate with that language. That's okay too, is honoring that. But prayer, meditation for me, and meditation sometimes it is a full guided meditation and candles lit and music playing. And sometimes it's just catching my breath. Like right now, all of you just take a deep breath, and just like, mindfulness and tuning into that. I really do love both of those as practices.
You had a really good heart meditation at an event I went to. I think it was a couple of years ago. And the first thing, it was like, hello, heart. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. I do that now. Hello, heart.
Hi, heart. But see, right now, all of you, if you're listening to this, your heart's beating and you didn't even have to remind it. You didn't have to like keep a task list on it. It's just life force that's working for you, is acknowledging it. That is also on my site, on my shop, called the Heart Guide Meditation. But those are two for me. Reading is a big part of my life. I'm also a big fan of a gratitude journal.
Mm-hmm.
And my gratitude journal, actually, if you really want to, I'll tell you the whole story on that, is I use in my gratitude journal, the first half of the page, I'll acknowledge things I'm grateful for. So 5 to 10 to 30 things based on, I'll just stack them up there like in rows. And then the bottom half of my page is my manifesting, or what I'm wanting to attract or call into my life. And sometimes those are simple I am statements, or what you'd call an affirmation, what you want to firm up in yourself. So you may not feel what you're writing, but you're choosing to firm it up. So I'll write things like, I am love, I am light, I'm on purpose. Or I'll write things that I want to manifest, like the free tickets to an amazing high-end. Tickets were not free, but I attracted a free ticket to see Oprah Winfrey speak last week.
How was that? Oh, I saw that you went.
Mind blowing. But you write the things like, I am loving this, or this is coming into my life, but I lead out my manifesting section where it says, God and angels, please help me with manifesting ... And then I write some things in there. Now that can turn into a whole other topic that we're discussing, but having a gratitude journal, reading or listening to positive content, I'm regularly, like your podcast will be on my subscription list.
Okay.
Is people that are positive, putting good content in the world. I love to fill my mind daily. That is the habit that is on the daily for me, where if I'm driving or I'm getting ready, maybe doing my hair, makeup, or making a meal, I'm often, not always, sometimes I just love some good music, but I'm often listening to a podcast or books on Audible. And so things that help me, but also when I'm really I'm soul searching, I like to get in nature, even if it's my own backyard. And if it's a warmer month, my feet on the grass or on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a great support system, a great therapist, great coach, there's nothing more important you invest in than your mental health. Nothing. It's like, we'll spend all exorbitant amounts of money on a pair of jeans or a really nice car or things, but it's like, are you investing in your mind and in your spirit, and finding, again, the different people that feel like, gosh, they're on my support team, has also been a key part of when my hot mess is hot and triggered. If I'm, again, trying to really process something, I think those are definitely key parts of my life, is having support. But those are some of my favorites: prayer, meditation. I definitely love to read, or I love to get in nature, or I go to a support person. And then there's other things on what you call your joy list, which are more expansion of more joy, and all kinds of things are on my joy list. And you can the resources I've mentioned, you can read about that there.
I did a joy list once. I think it was actually at your Elevate concert.
Yeah,
Tiffany concert,
guys.
Your event. But I started up a self-nourishment that heal the soul, and it's like an ongoing list of stuff that I continually add to, because there's so many ways. And some people are auditory learners, some people are visual, some people are more experiential. And I've noticed that with my kids, what's reaching one is really not reaching the other. And it's getting creative around, how does my soul speak to me? Another kind of thing I've been processing lately is there are many voices that go through our being at any given time. The old voices that we were told things, the actual, voice maybe of God or spirit or angels. There's our own rhetoric in our head. I think for me, it's when you're talking about getting right to the heart and just going within, for me, it's like, what is my soul trying to tell me right now? What is my actual being wanting and needing? And that's what I love when you were talking about the gratitude journal, is like, yeah, there's a top half of, what's going right, what I'm grateful for, what's shown up, what I'm really blessed with. And then that bottom half is what is needing to be manifested, or what do I want to attract? Part, I think, of that self-confidence that we're trying to generate is, what are you capable of as a creator? What can you be more mindful of that's showing up right now that could potentially be what you've asked for? If we don't capture that, don't you think it kind of just floats past us, and we don't really acknowledge or maintain, oh yeah, I'm getting everything I want. It's coming, it's here. I went through I need to be better about this gratitude journal thing because I always think of it in my head.
Yeah.
And you've reminded me that I need to actually make it more visceral, just put it down, acknowledge it.
Yeah. Well, and I've gone through seasons, again, practice, right? And there are seasons where I'm really great with the gratitude journal and times I get away from it. And I think, again, what matters of this overall conversation is one, to choose, and it's a decision, right? Which is part of the answer to your question out of the gate, is to choose. Our choice trumps our feelings, right? Like our choice, everything is about choice. We get to choose how we respond to life events. We get to decide. I think one of those core decisions, though, to make is to decide my happiness is up to me. Mm-hmm. And as much as, right, because all of us have an airtight alibi. I have one, if you're interested in ever hearing it, of like, oh, hey, look how this parent in my life didn't show up. Or I was married and now I got divorced. These are both things that are true for me, by the way, that are like, hey, I'm really sad, or that really hurt me. And I think it's important to have gentleness and tenderness and self-compassion for the hurt and the wounds you've been through. And that's true for all of us. And there's still then a decision. So not or, it's not either or. Like I can be self-compassionate for the pain and the grief I've gone through. I can be compassionate and I can take accountability that, hey, even though I was, had some experiences as a child that were really tough, or got divorced about 5 years ago for me personally, I was like, whoa, I've been through some things in life, but ultimately I'm just saying, hey, my happiness is up to me. So one is choosing that you're going to choose to be like champion yourself, to say, I'm going to take the ownership. And then from there, realizing that this is a pathway of practice. It's not about perfection. It's not about you feel on all the time. You will get triggered. You will, if you spend time on social media, at times feel less than.
Yeah,
you'll still filtered images. You'll see people achieving cool things. Wow, look what they're doing. Oh, that's cool. Or wow, But you can do that wherever you're at. You can compare yourself to your next door neighbor and all the things. But it's realizing those two things. Make a decision and choose to have a better relationship with you as the one companion guaranteed to travel this life, like to choose to love that person that you are. There'll never be another you. And secondly is realizing and to have a lot of patience that these are practices. But the practice, the power of them is this new concept I'm teaching. We just launched this course in March called Sales Summit Series, and we let off session 1. And I shared there for the first time anywhere publicly a new concept I'm teaching that ties back to this whole self-care conversation, what I'm calling the energy economy. Is that a lot of times I get hired to help people grow their business, right? Sales. But I spend so much time in self-care. That's my number one sales strategy, is let's up your self-care, because really everything's energy. You know this. Yeah. I'm an energy being. You're an energy being. Everything has an energy.
If you can learn to manage your energy, you pretty much got it.
Right. But that's a practice. So we're going to work on, but I want to practice my energy, is that if I'm working on taking better care of me, my energy lifts and it goes higher. Like I said, at some point in this podcast with you, is when you feel better, do you show up differently? Of course you do. So when you feel better and you're investing in your energy economy, then the way you show up in business, you're going to attract so much more, because the person with the most energy wins. And it's not about your energy has to be you're this over the top certain personality, but even if your energy is super grounded, super calm, super peaceful, when you're in business, when you're in marriage, relationship, parenting, and again, no one's going to get it perfect, but understand your energy economy is directly attached to your financial economy, to your relationship economy. And so it influences everything. And so it's seeing this isn't just, we're not just talking about, some people get hung up on, well, isn't self-care kind of selfish? Like, I'm a mom, I got lots of kids, I got life, and I got to take care of them. We're not talking about you living at the day spa, but we are talking about you absolutely honoring and caring for your body, your mind, your heart, which is your happiness, and your spirit. And that as you do so, it's an investment, because see, when I have more energy, I know I'm going to show up differently. When you have more energy, you're a better mom.
Right.
And by better, I don't mean like in judgment, but I just mean you show up with more presence, more intention, more patience, because you're feeling better. When you're feeling fried and depleted, we already know how that shows up.
Yeah. I read somewhere that it's only like your actual self-care that helps you thrive and up energy and all those things. It's only about 5 to 7% of your whole 24-hour day to affect the other 93 to 95% of the rest of your day, right? So that little investment in time yields such a great return that it's almost nonsensical not to look at it that way. I'm reminded as I'm talking with you how I need to be more gentle with myself because, I run a business and I have a family and I have a lot of other demands and I'm trying to write a book and all these other things. And I'm like, for me, honestly, self-care is what we're doing right now. Like this feeds me. This makes my energy kind of go ballistic because inside I'm going, this is restorative. This is affirming. This lifts me. And for that association, with another like-minded soul like you, it feels like, I could do this a lot. I could do this all the time. And also I see a lot, and maybe you do too, and maybe we can kind of wrap up with this, just the concept of unconditional love. When you had talked before about how questions open and it's inquiry, that's really powerful for us. I had somebody pose a question to me once I've never forgotten, and I wrote it in big, bold letters. What if I unilaterally and unconditionally loved and accepted everyone? And I would say, the caveat too is yourself. What if I saw myself in everyone? And what if I operated from the stance of unilaterally and unconditionally, just flat out, that's me. That's what I do. I love and accept everyone. That doesn't mean I tolerate abuse or dysfunction or toxicity. But what if I was that person and I learned to cultivate it in me as a practice first so that I could then bring it broader?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can practice that, like you said, not be perfect, but at least just be committed to that, unilaterally and unconditionally loving ourselves, I can't even imagine how things would transform for us.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love you just modeled with maybe not even knowing you modeled it is something we already taught here today, which is you're your own best life coach. And your own intuition said, I'd like to be gentler with myself. And I was like, see, you know how it's like you modeled that of like you tuning in. And sometimes when I tune in, it's like, all right, love, what do we need? And sometimes I'm like, hey, girlfriend, we got to move. Let's kick some things up, chip chop, like enough, like, okay. Because on the flip side, then I've had some clients say, well, yeah, I'm really doing great with the self-care, but I'm using it perhaps as a form of procrastinating of doing my work in the world or making the sales calls or things like that. And so again, it's learning how to intuitively or internally monitor what do you need more of right now? And going through that quadrant worksheet that you can, again, download off my site and looking at physically, do you need more rest right now? Do you need to move your body? Nutrition? Do you need to, on the mindset one or the mind, so it goes body, mind, do you need to declutter your bedroom or your bathroom? Or do you need to read or nourish your brain or create a vision board for your dreams and goals and visualize? On the heart one, do you need to do some things off your joy list? On the spirit one, is it meditation, prayer, reading, study, like connecting? You'll know for yourself. It's like, here's what I need. And I love that you just modeled that in a really beautiful, simple way of just saying, what do you need more of? And right now you're like, I could use a little more gentleness. Probably been a little hard on yourself lately. And
I have.
Let's come back to kindness and what would feel. And so what I'm going to ask you internalize right now is the question I've modeled, which is, what do you need, sweetheart? And then asking yourself, and if you say, well, it's gentleness, then I want you to, the next layer of question of inquiry comes into, I would look at the question of, what would that mean or look like or feel like? Or what's one thing I could do that would feel gentle to you? And you might say, I'm going to go get my cozy socks on and get my comfy, cozy blanket and make a hot tea and wrap up in that while I finish my work. And that feels like I'm more gentle. Or I'm going to take a hot soak tonight and get out the bath salts, the oils, light the candles. I'm going to really have a queen's bath tonight, right? Like not just a quick shower. I'm having a queen's bath experience. And whatever that looks like for you, but it's tuning in that you ask, what do you need? And then a lot of times, like my intuition will often say to me when I ask that, will say, I need love.
Yeah.
Say, oh, and then I'll ask, what would that look like right now? What would feel like love? And sometimes love is, hey, let's go for a run. And sometimes love is, hey, let's take a nap.
Yeah.
I need rest. It's just learning to trust yourself. I mean, don't you think a lot of this conversation, we could relabel it as well as, how do I trust myself more?
And that's where confidence comes as well, because when you continually, consistently show up for you, that sends a psychological message that you're worth it. And
Sisters, say that again and louder for the people in the back.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
With all the business coaching I do and all this, and I know you get it too, and you run programs, it's like, I have noticed that, and yeah, it's really easy to externalize it. I'll bring it back to myself later, but I have noticed that the people who are the most successful are not the most talented, the most charismatic. They're just consistent. And if we were to bring that back to what I just said, like what if I was just consistently and continuously showing up for myself, not my business necessarily, or even my family, or the things that are near and dear to me and my friendships and family relationships and all that. But what if I was first and I consistently and continuously showed up for myself first? Because really the illusion is there's so many fires to put out outside of yourself. And when I feel inflammation, when I feel fire inside of me and I'm getting triggered, I think the breath and coming back to, like, what was the question you said? What do I need, love? What do we need, sweetheart? What if I made that the practice when I'm getting triggered?
But when we're learning, we're doing that, to your point, is we're learning to trust ourselves more. And with trust, I believe, I'm going to say something that I'm curious to your thoughts about this, and it's a bold thing to proclaim, but I truly believe that everything you want to manifest next, especially something big, hinges, like it's dependent upon your ability to trust yourself. It's a calling into to say, yeah, I trust myself. I've got what I've got. You're a steward of your body. You're a steward of your time, steward of your home, your life, all of it. It's stewardship is like, yeah, I'm learning to trust myself with what I have. So I'm ready to trust myself with more. I'm taking care of this that's in my stewardship. I'm what I call sometimes lead yourself to lead others. We're calling about personal leadership is, can I lead myself? Am I in leadership of taking great care of me? If you do that, and again, not perfectly, but committed, when you are committed in a committed relationship with yourself to say, I want to take better care of you, honey. I'm going to show up for you. I'm not going to wait for the right perfect man or the right woman or the right leader or the right accreditation or the right amount of money or the right anything outside of me to finally make me feel like I'm enough, because there's never enough. We can just keep pursuing that. I'm going to be in a committed relationship with me and take care of me. And in doing so, now I learn to trust myself. And now I'm ready for the next calling on my life, the next layer of leadership, the next mantle. You know what I'm saying? Versus reactively, I got to wait for something to happen outside of me to feel good.
Yeah. And it's that comfortability in your own skin. And, everything we want out of our comfort zone. So when we're talking about self-care, it is not in your comfort zone to do self-care sometimes. In fact, it's not, like you said, it's not a day at the spa. It might be a bath and it might be those nurturing, lovey-dovey things, but mostly it's the monitoring of your self-talk. It's checking in, it's breath, it's the work. It's not our default mode, I guess is what I'm saying. It's the default would be just to let everything go, just to let it, let everything go. Well, oh gosh. Okay. So we do have to wrap this up because I could just keep going.
I know. This has been so fun though.
Well, it has. And I love your practicality with these things because oftentimes, there's an ethereal sort of like almost esoteric nature to self-care that not a lot of people can grasp. But I love you have tools. I love that people can, I have kind of a similar thing, but in a different sort of like, I guess you could say platform. But so they can go to your website, they can download a self-care guide and do some work around that. And I highly suggest you guys get a hold of our what is it just called? Heart
guide meditation.
Heart guide meditation. That's a really good check-in that can land you back into the voice of your soul and just that honoring of going into the self-love and just kind of getting back in touch with that and connecting in with that. Any last thoughts before we close out? Because there's been some serious meaty stuff here. And I think what you were saying, and this is how I'll end and then I'll let you end, but just that what I kept hearing from you is there's a point of reckoning where you get to choose in to be all in your body and love it and accept it and trust it. So that's what I kept hearing is that you've got to decide, you've got to commit to that.
I definitely think so. There's two thoughts I want to wrap up with. The first one is I have a free course in the month of May that I offer once a year called Mindset Makeover. And it's powerful. So a lot of things we're talking about, free coaching course. This is a $500 course we offer for free just during the month of May. And you can opt in and listen live, or you can listen to the recordings at your own convenience. So I know it's not all of you could attend live based on your schedules, but we talk about mindset and manifesting. We also talk about marketing, and we talk about your money mindset. That course you can find at mymindsetmakeover.com. So my, M-Y, as in yours, mymindsetmakeover.com. If you want to participate and go through a life coaching experience and see these changes for yourself, that's definitely one thing I want to just make sure that you all know about as a great resource that's coming up. Secondly, is I think a lot of this, again, is about what we've mentioned already, is really the power of decision is everything. One of my favorite quotes of all time comes from a gentleman by the name of Foster Hubbard, where he says, doing isn't difficult, deciding is. Because a lot of things we're talking about, like taking 10 minutes to start your day with what we call a morning ritual, right? Or taking time to move your body for 10, 15 minutes a day, or take time to pray or to meditate. A lot of these things aren't time intensive. They're these small, simple things, but these small, simple things like the rudder of a ship that distinctly determines the direction of where you are going. And so even though it's like, oh, it's just one day, well, one day becomes a decade pretty soon.
Yeah.
And it's thinking about where you're steering your ship is. So as we talk about some of these concepts, these practices, is to do just that, to make a decision. How are you going to start your day tomorrow? What is going to be, to your point, some self-talk? What are your practices around self-love and self-care going to be? And deciding at the foundational level that even if it's just a little bit, just a little progress, that you're saying, I want to have at least a little bit better relationship with me. I don't know if I'm ready for the full intimacy and to sit with all my thoughts and go on a 10-day silent meditation retreat, or something like, hello. But it's making the decision to say, yes, I'm going to choose me. I choose me. And I'm going to choose to nourish this person that's me, my stewardship of myself. I'm going to choose to invest in that vessel a little bit more intentionally this day and this week as a result of hanging out with us today. That to me is, I think, the most important thing is that it isn't ever the perfection conversation. It's always the decision to engage and at least make some progress with it.
That's amazing. I've been taking a lot of notes as we've been talking, and you've served as a witness for me in many domains. So I appreciate your wisdom and just the emphasis you have on we are our greatest asset. We are, what did you call it? We're in this energy economy. It really does boil down to how we manage that and how we up our energy, and that's it. Like, yeah, we're the only ones that can do that. No one else can do that for us.
Yeah.
So
thank you for having me. It's always an honor. You are such a bright light in the world. And anytime I get to collaborate or play with you or spend time with you, it's always 1,000% yes. So thank you for trusting me to come into your tribe. And I want to honor you that you're a woman who's willing to use her voice for good and that you've created. I mean, podcast is a free thing, friends, but it's not free on her end to create and produce it. So I just honor you that you're choosing to create valuable conversation and to put good out in the world. And I just love you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thanks, Tiffany, for reminding us that we really do need to be our own best friend. And it's up to us to put the fuel in our tank to give us the energy that we need to do our lives. So just as a reminder, my course bundle, the 22-day depression cleanse and the emotional wholeness masterclass, between now and the end of this month are 2 for the price of 1, lifetime access. So go to my website, cherieburton.com, and check out that course bundle. You'll see it right there on the very top of my website. I hope that you will continue to tell your friends about this podcast and share it where you can, because I feel in my heart this can be a vehicle to really support women in their awakening.